Hello, welcome back to this new section. And this section we're talking about HTML properly. I'm sure all through the first introductory section you were wondering like, okay, when are we going to start? When are we going to be done with this whole thing? And when are we going to start? When are we going to start the real thing, the real coding, the real HTML? Well, finally we've gotten to the part where we deal with HTML and codes and all of that. All right. So what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext markup language. It's not a programming language on its own, but it's the foundation. That's the word for web development, particularly for web development. And what HTML does is I made an instance for us in the previous video. We saw the importance of HTML. With HTML, you combine elements to form something. You write HTML. To write HTML, we pick from a set of standard elements that all browsers recognize. And we have some common elements. We have the paragraph, p tag, the h1, the header, the main header, g, form, and quite a few others which we'll be going through in this section. So first and foremost, to start your HTML, the first thing you need to do is, I believe for you to want to start HTML, you probably have a project in mind. You want to do something, probably. Yeah, and you probably should first of all create a folder. You can create a folder anywhere, just your normal folder. You can do that in your desktop, probably, just anywhere. But me, I like having my things organized. So just ensure that you have a folder first of all. You can create a folder in your desktop if you so wish. But I've created a folder already, so I won't bother creating a new folder. Now I have a folder created here, and the folder is named HTML practice. This is the folder. It's an empty folder. That's where I want to do that. We're going to all everything we're working with in this HTML course will be working inside this folder. So let's assume I want to start up a new project. I want to design a website, a page, or anything. The first thing you do is to create a folder. Now, the next thing is to connect your VS Code. I'm sure by now you've installed your VS Code and you already know what the VS Code is. It is what we use to write code. So by now, okay. So the next thing is to connect your VS Code to that particular folder. Now, how do you do that? You click on File. When you click on File option, it pops out so many options, and you click on Open Folder. The Open Folder option. This is it. Open Folder, and it takes you to your documents or your desktop, wherever it takes you. If you're a user of laptops or PCs, you are used to things like this. You just have to try to set up, pick the folder you want. So let's assume, for instance, I'm in desktop. I click on codes. That's where I am. No, not codes. I click on something else. I click on, okay, I'm in desktop. I'm not even in desktop actually. I'm in desktop. This is one folder. I want to go inside dev. Now inside dev, I have this. This is where I'm going. One voice tutorial. And then I click on one voice HTML tutorial. And then I have this HTML practice folder. I click on it once and I click select folder. Now, automatically, if you notice, the VS Code will be connected. Once you connect it to that folder, you will see it written here. That's the name of the folder. So you can toggle it to open it. Inside of it, inside this folder, there's nothing there. It is as empty as what we had here as well. It's as empty as what we have. Whatever we have in this folder, we will see it as well in our VS Code. So now the next thing you're going to do is, inside this main folder, you might actually want to do so many things. On an advanced level, you probably have an HTML, you have HTML file, CSS files, JavaScript files. So it is always better to create folder for each of these things. But in this course, since we're talking about HTML alone, we're just going to create an HTML folder. So inside the HTML folder, we're going to put our HTML files. Now, we have right in this place, you can see there's a blue border pointing to the fact that we are pointing to this HTML practice folder. The first option here is to create a new file. The second one here is to create a new folder. So we're going to click the second one to create a new folder, and then we're going to give it a name, HTML. That is probably the best thing to name it. But inside of this folder, we want to keep all our HTML files. I click enter, and now we have a child folder, a child directory, a child folder. Now, if I try to create another folder, take note of this blue border. It simply means anything you are doing it to this folder. If I want to go back to this one, I double click it, and you see that the blue border is now pointing to this folder. So inside this HTML practice, I can create more folders if I want, or files. But now what we want to do is, let's click on the HTML. If you look at it manually, it is exactly, can you see it has been created. Now that one as well is very empty. I toggle it, there's nothing inside, it's empty. The arrow is pointing down now, so it's opened. So what we're going to do is to create an HTML file. And to do this, you create the first one here. You click on the first one here rather. I click on it, it pops out this. I enter the name of the file. Now you can give the file any name of your choice. You can choose to give it, happy. You can choose to give it anything. You can choose. Most times I give my first file home, because most often when I'm designing a web, the first page I create, or the first page I likely to create, is the home page. So most times I always name it as home. But there is a standard, there is a generalized name that developers give their home page. It is called index. But like I said, you don't have to name it index, you don't have to name it home. But then take note, the fact that you have the liberty to give it any name does not mean you can come and give it a name such as butterfly. Then you are probably designing, maybe you are designing a web page for a school, and then you just suddenly give this page because that's what you feel like. It won't make sense. Ensure that even though you have the liberty, whatever name you are giving it should be relating to the site, the page, the blog, the project you are doing. So I will just go with the standard name that you find most developers use, index. Now, if I write just index, does that mean I've created it? No. If you see this logo here, means that this thing is just recognized to be a regular text file, not an HTML file at all. Now, what makes it an HTML file is when you add the extension. And the extension to add to the name for you to create an HTML file is .html. Now, once I type .html, you can see that this logo changes. This is the standard of logo of HTML. It changes. Remember, I said you can have it as, you can change the name to anything you like. Home dot, just make sure it ends with .html. If I make it .htm, will it work? It might, and it might not work. HT. So just ensure that it is complete .html, and then you type enter. Once you type enter, it opens it here for you in your VS Code. It is still an empty file. If you go and check manually, what we've created is also in this file. Can you see we have our home? So this is where we're coming from. Now we have one file inside our home directory, our home folder. So let's go back to VS Code. Now remember, everything we've done now is to create a file. So the question is, when you create a file, what is the next thing to do? How do you, what's the startup, what's the first thing you do on an HTML file? In the next video, I'll be talking about the HTML skeleton. See you in the next video.